Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Ready, Set, Vote. My name is Stacey Bryant, and I am the Democracy and Integrated Voter Engagement Coordinator for Family Values at Work. For those that are new here, Family Values at Work is a 501c3 organization committed to realizing a world where everyone has access to paid family and medical leave, paid safe and sick days, and affordable childcare. We pursue this world in partnership with our network of members in 27 states and counting, key partners like our panelists here tonight, through storytelling and education. We recently launched our Democracy and Integrated Voter Engagement program to connect care issues to the power of our votes. I'm both honored and excited to welcome to Dive's Ready, Set, Vote panel. Tonight, we have an incredible group of panelists with us, each of whom brings a wealth of experience in voter engagement, education, and mobilization. Our goal tonight is to explore the most effective ways to encourage voter turnout and inspire communities, especially as we gear up for the upcoming election. I also like to note that one of our panelists was not able to attend tonight due to Hurricane Helene. I would like to acknowledge that many are being affected by the hurricane and will need lots of love and support to recover. This is why we do the work that we do. So I would like to acknowledge that Amanda Holloway was not able to join us, but we do have our other lovely panelists here, and we would like to introduce them. So we'll start with Mel. If you could share your name, your pronouns, and your org, and a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you for having me, Stacey. Lovely to see you again. My name is Mel. My pronouns are she, her, ella, and I'm proud to serve as the advising director for Youth Action Fund. A little bit about myself is that in this role as advising director, I oversee our advising department where we get to grant stipends, resources that are hard to reach, such as, voter registration, which we'll be getting into today, and overall just guidance and support for young organizers in Florida that, want to be the change that we need in this state. So really happy to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. And Rio.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Rio Fernandez. I am the Director of Civic Engagement with the National Urban Indian Family Coalition. I'm an also enrolled member of the Lower Elwha Clallam Tribe up here in beautiful Seattle, Washington. We manage and lead a coalition of 24 urban Indian nonprofits, 501c3 organizations spread out across 17 states. Each one that we work with has deep community ties, and I'll have a chance to talk a little bit more about the work that they do. But we work very hard to make sure that urban Native voters in particular are energized and educated and engaged with around the 2024 and all general election and just civic engagement work in general.
Thank you so much, Rio. We just lost John. In case John doesn't get an opportunity to introduce himself, John R. Taylor. There's John. Last but certainly not least.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Good evening, everyone. He Trilogy pronouns, John Taylor, Black Male Initiative, Georgia. I'm one of the co-founders of the organization. We are focused on civic engagement. What we tell people all the time is that voting is just your ticket into the park. It's everything that you do after that allows you to get on all the rides and have all the fun. So we are focused 365 days a year around civic engagement and education, direct civic and legislation, criminal restorative justice, economic empowerment, and Black mental health and wellness.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all joining us. So our panel tonight will touch on how we can continue to engage voters, what has worked in the past, and the obstacles we're facing, especially in the light of the pandemic and the rise of disinformation campaigns. Each of our panelists here brings a wealth of knowledge and unique perspective. And I'm eager to dive into the discussion, see what I did there, dive into the discussion to explore what strategies have been most effective in mobilizing communities and how we can build on those successes. So let's get into it. We know in 2020, we saw historic voter turnout, particularly in BIPOC communities. Black voter turnout was at 62%, Latino at 53%, Asian American at 59%, and Indigenous communities at 59% as well. So we know that these numbers demonstrate the growing power of these communities driven by mobilization efforts, increased awareness, and targeted outreach. But they also highlight the urgency of fighting against the voter suppression laws we've seen enacted in places like Georgia, Texas, and Florida. So our communities are targets of these laws, but we also know that the key to transforming the political landscape. So let's start with you, Mel. What has been the most impactful ways you've successfully engaged and educated your community about voting, and what challenges have you faced along the way?
Yeah, so definitely one of the most successful ways that Youth Action Fund has been engaging the youth vote is, training them and paying them. So we can't expect people to do this work for free. It's tough work, right? Like you're out in the field and people feel some type of way about elections and candidates, and that's perfectly valid. So one thing we pride ourselves is paying our campus coordinators. So we actually have a program right now where we've paid up to, I want to say, 30 campus coordinators this school year in high schools across Florida to register their peers to vote. Nothing is better than that relational organizing. When a friend or a classmate talks to you about the importance of voting, it's going to resonate because we have those shared experiences. And with their efforts, we have been able to register almost 900 high schoolers to vote just this school year. So clearly the money talks, right? But also like the energy is there. So students want to be involved. They want to make decisions. They want to vote for the people that are going to affect the next 50 plus years of their life. And obviously that comes with its hurdles, right? So there's the normal administrative hurdles. For some reason, schools don't want to see their students registered, and that's something we're encountering. I would think, right, if we have students that are going to be fresh adults, we'd want them to have the power and the voice to vote and to make their voices heard. But in addition to that, right, just overall apathy and lack of education. People don't recognize that it's not only the presidential ticket we see. Your school board member makes decisions about your curriculum, about school safety, and this matters to students. So it's really also a matter of just letting them know that there's more to their ballot than what they may see on the news.
Thank you. Everybody has a right to play a role in their democracy. And how about what's going on at BMI, John?
So I think we share some of the same interests and challenges, right? Like we have a cadre of young folks. Now we have a team of over 50 canvassers who have been doing voter registration, hitting doors. We got a goal of 250,000 doors that we want to hit this cycle on the C3 side. We got 50,000 pledge cards. For us, everything is timed out. October 7th is the last day for voter registration. We understand that. We've been hitting tons of high schools. We've also been hitting trade schools, tech colleges, junior colleges, commuter schools to make sure that individuals who live in the community can register and vote. And then we've been hitting our elder facilities. So we do monthly events at a number of elder facilities to register them to vote, to make sure they have all the information they need. With the ever-changing landscape around laws for the Secretary of State and Board of Elections and how much more difficult they're making it for us to vote, we're just making sure people are well educated. They know what they need to know. They know where they have to go to vote, and they know all the hoops they have to jump through. And we're making sure that they know how to get through those hoops. And then lastly, we have an amazing intergenerational coalition of folks. So we're on track to hit our 2,500 voter registrations for this year, which really means for us that we're opening the doors and providing more opportunity for folks to lift up their voice, because we know if you're not registered, we're not leaving any tools on the table for our liberation. And if you're not registered, that's one tool we've left on the table.
Absolutely. Thank you. In Rio, tell me about some of the successes and some of the hurdles that you guys have. when dealing
Yeah,
with.
absolutely. I'd like to start with the hurdles because I think that really does help inform kind of what the solutions that we have. So, the NUIFC, we work specifically with urban Indian nonprofits. And so the challenges that face urban Native voters, I think, are twofold. I think the first one, and this is really common among a lot of Native households, among a lot of Native families, is a pretty well founded and understandable mistrust and cynicism around what the federal government can do, what state government can do, how much impact a vote can have, just the ability and truly what, does it mean to vote and what does that really impact does that truly have. And then the other one for our urban Native families and our urban Native communities is that, to the most part, people don't understand that there are a large population of urban Native communities. Even when people mean well intentions, have good intentions around supporting Native communities, they often think of reservation communities, they think of tribal communities. Most people are unaware of the fact that more than 70% of Native people live off reservation. So when people try and work with Native communities and are not a part of that, they are often usually thinking, okay, well, how do we help with the tribal governments? How do we go to reservations? And Indian country is all the country. It's everywhere. We are everywhere, and so that is a really big challenge for that we like to face. And so to combat that, we've been funding different urban Indian 501c3s in 17 different cities, each one with deep community roots. Each one has been around for a really long time. And our biggest focus is to not try and tell these organizations what to do, but to work with each of them about how to best connect with their community. We understand it is really normal for a national organization to kind of parachute in and say, hey, we do things this way, this way, this way, and that's how they need to be done. And we know that's just not effective for these organizations. These organizations are the leaders. These are the organizations that know their community the best. So we want to make sure to work with them. We structure our grants in a way that allows the organizations to be as creative and as they need to be, which is really where we're able to have a lot of success. So we have some organizations that do door knocking. We have organizations that really focus on making sure that they're engaging with their unhoused populations. We have organizations that are really focused on having a lot of community events, being really out there. And then other organizations that are a lot more focused on voter education, what are the things on your ballot and stuff like that. Each organization kind of picks and pulls and decides what's best for their community. But our biggest focus is making sure that we're in a position to support them and allow them to lead this conversation and to lead the work. So that's what I would say our biggest focus is to make sure our trusted messengers, our community leaders are empowered to do what they need to do.
Amazing. And it's a beautiful thing to hear about not only organizations, but folks in the community themselves having the autonomy to be able to mobilize and educate in the way that makes sense for them. And just across the country, I'm hearing about transportation services being offered and education about early voting. I muted myself. It's really important for folks to be able to meet their communities where they are, and like you said, Rio, not parachute in to say this is how it has to be done. We got to do things differently if we expect different results, right? So that's a perfect segue into my next question. So we know that we all had to adapt quickly during the pandemic, which significantly changed how we connect with voters, right? So how did the pandemic change your voter engagement approach, and what new strategies helped increase participation? Anyone can jump in.
I can jump in. So one of our biggest focuses that we have around voter engagement, civic engagement, particularly around voter engagement. So each election system varies state to state. So I reside in Washington State. That's where I vote. Washington State is, in my opinion, one of the best states around that. We have full mail-in ballots. We have our ballots delivered to us 4 weeks until election day. We have a chance you can return it up until like 8 p.m. on election day to different drop boxes that are located all around the state. You can mail it back if you want. There's just a lot of freedom and ability to easily vote. And so what we like to do with our organizations, and a lot of this stems from COVID, is we want to start figuring out with our organizations. We really started to push early voting, mail-in voting, whatever your options are. So we really wanted to be aware and help our community learn about the options that were available for them. So it obviously varies state to state, but if you can get your ballot in before then, if you can request a mail-in ballot and have it just sent to your home, fill it out, return it via that, that's something we want to encourage. So it's more I think for us, a really big emphasis on what are our options to work best for you. We know, I have heard a lot of horror stories of people saying they've gone to their polling place, the line is out the door, they're going to be having to wait hours. Oh, I have to pick my kid up from school. Oh, I have, my second job starts soon. Like, what am I going to do? How am I going to be able to vote? It's just not worth it. Not going to be able to get it done. That's obviously a form of voter suppression in its own way. And so we really want to focus on, hey, we understand how busy life is. Hey, the weekend before, you can get your ballot in, done. Don't even think about election day. Hey, if you request this already, they'll send you a ballot. You can return it 2 weeks in advance. Here's how you do it. Here's how you can register to vote online. Hey, did you miss this register online deadline? Don't worry, you can still register in person here. So we really want to make sure to give as much information to our organizations as possible. We deliver them all handouts with a full breakdown of their state's election system, what their options are, any deadlines they might have. We do that for the primary and for the general election as well too. So we really just want to emphasize on how do we make voting as easy and accessible as possible for everyone.
Only if the world was a better place where voting accessibility was
Yeah.
was that easy. How about you, John?
Yeah, I'm sitting here just listening to a dream.
I
I
know.
would love that. So for us, we know the challenges that we face in Georgia around making sure that every voter can get to the polls. We've had challenges with new laws in place that penalize folks for accidentally registering someone, for not filling out the absentee ballot correctly, for having individuals not have exact name match. There are any number of reasons that could lead to litigation, which is an extremely scary thing for voters in the state of Georgia. So now what we are doing is making sure folks are educated. We try to make sure they understand not just what the laws are, what the penalties are, and what the processes are. And then the pandemic provided us a unique opportunity. We started using the My Voter Page Georgia site, mvp.sos.ga.gov, so that we could check the registration of every individual that we spoke to, every person that we came in contact with. Some folks thought they were registered, but we know over 1 million people got purged in the rolls during the last cycle. It's incredibly important for us to check every person's registration. We've also started partnering with organizations like Politicit to provide daycare because of those extremely long lines, because people don't have access. We provide food. We make sure that there are caterers that come in, kids can eat, kids can learn. We do mock elections with them. We make sure that we provide resource and support, rise to the polls, partnering with organizations like Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda. And then there's one other thing that's really critical, and that's the election protection on the back end. We know that in Georgia, you have 72 hours to cure a ballot or a challenge. And so we are all hands on deck. Usually we keep our crews around until election day, and that's it. This time, our crews are on point all week, the week of November 5th, because we are going to walk down every challenge we can and make sure that every possible vote that someone casts gets into the box. The only other thing I can bring up that's of super importance is, while some folks are doing absentee ballot and we think it's a powerful tool, don't get us wrong, we also want to capitalize early vote. So from October 15th to November 1st, we know that depending on whether or not there are early vote days on Saturdays, which counties are open, we're looking at exactly 15 days. So we're trying to flood as many folks as possible to vote early on one of those 15 days, because it also allows you county-wide access in your county where you reside. So it gives you more options to get to a polling site, as opposed to election day where you can only go to your precinct where you're relegated to vote. And those change, unfortunately. So again, My Voter Page is a great way to make sure you know where you're supposed to vote and who you're voting for. And then working with our organizations gives you a lot of flexibility and as much access as possible if you are going to have to endure long lines and skip time from work in order to go vote.
Absolutely. And how about you, Mel?
Yeah, I definitely resonate with my Georgia friends over there, because Florida is also going through it. I can't speak too much as for what Youth Action Fund did before the pandemic, because we've only been around a year, but I will speak to Florida's election laws. And how they have not gotten easier. They've made voting much harder. You know, in addition to election day still not being a holiday, in addition to really just having automatic voter registration for all, we also saw some election laws passed in 2022, one of which requires people to request a new vote by mail ballot every year. So it's no longer, valid and active until they see that you haven't voted. You have to request that every year. And that's another administrative hurdle that people need to go through. Think of elderly folks that don't even realize they haven't gotten their vote by mail ballot yet until it's too late. Think about disabled folks who can't go out and vote in person, who aren't aware that the laws are changing constantly. So, Florida makes the laws confusing, and they also don't make voting accessible. So, Youth Action Fund really strives to make sure that people are aware after they register to vote, letting them know, update that vote by mail if you want to. Make sure that the address you're registered at is still, accurate. And if not, you're going to update with me right now. So those are some of the things that we do to, overcome these obstacles that Florida has implemented.
Thank you. And as you noticed, it's not a coincidence that BIPOC communities that were affected the most by the pandemic are also being affected the most by access to voting. So the system is working how it was designed to work, which is why we show up and do the work that we do. So that leads into like my next question about disinformation, which social media, which definitely heightened during the pandemic, because most folks were in homes. Disinformation about voting has been a persistent problem, particularly in Black and Brown communities. So when false narratives about voter fraud or eligibility have discouraged participation, how do you or your organization tackle misinformation? And what strategies have helped to build trust with voters?
So I can hop in here. We love to take misinformation and disinformation head on, right? So we say misinformation is just we didn't know, right? So we educate our communities 365. We didn't know about someone's record. We didn't know about whether or not you could register. We didn't know about changes in the law. We love to spend time researching, figuring out what the facts are and putting that in cool ways, infographics, cartoons, little kind of comic books into the community. So we do that. Disinformation is about somebody trying to steal your voice and steal your rights. And so we take that head on. Like we get a little sassy with it. You know what I'm saying? Like we love to have the conversation about what's at stake, about why would somebody want you to be misdirected? What's in it for them, for you actually not to have the truth? Like, what does somebody get out of confusing you? Because you would think that in a democracy, you want everybody to vote their truth. So what's behind somebody not telling you the truth? And then we have a lot of fun actually unpacking that conversation with folks. And we use real world examples, whether it be in criminal and restorative justice, education, policies that are in place, the Crown Act. Like there are a million different ways for BIPOC communities for us to talk about how historically we have been misled and how it benefits one cadre of folks who have a lot of resource and a lot of access. And what happens when we are no longer misled, when we wake up. So yeah, we try to take it lightheartedly, but also like serious enough, head on with a little bit of energy, because we found that nobody really wants the boring kind of like heavy conversation about they're after us. They more want the lighthearted kind of like, what you gonna do if somebody ran into your house right now and stole your TV? You would just look at them, all your shows gone, or you gonna chase them down in the street and get your TV back. Well, that's what this is. Your democracy is your TV. They just ran in your house and stole your democracy. You gonna chase them down and get it back? Let's go get it. So yeah.
I love that. I love that. Absolutely. Rio?
Yeah, so we take disinformation, misinformation, all of that really seriously. We actually have a part of our digital communication strategy. Our person that's kind of running all of our social media channels has created a network of urban Indian voices, leaders to flag disinformation when they see it and wherever they see it. So they see something online, we have a messaging service set up so that they can share that information with the rest of the cohort. The rest of the cohort can flag it and be aware that it's being spread, or that, and what is the best way to combat it. I think addressing it head on is always really important for us. And then the other big thing that we really want to try to talk a lot about on social media channels and to address head on is there is a lot of people in different spaces that are arguing less about lying about what a policy is or how it would interact, but just this sort of general anger and just this sort of general, oh, why do you care about voting? Like, you shouldn't care about that, it's not important. Like, it's all these people are the same, there's no difference. Like, what, it's so why bother getting so engaged about it, all this sort of stuff that's meant not so much to lie to someone, but to just lower enthusiasm, to make it so that people feel like there's no point in voting, that there is no reason to do all of this work. And that's the reason that we want to work with trusted community messengers like these urban Indian nonprofits, because when you hear it from someone that has your back, that has been around for a decade, has been around, has an after school program, has an elder program, has been doing all this work with you, it's a lot different than when you see a billboard on a bus or something like that. We know that the best way to combat misinformation is with people that are trusted messengers, that have put that work in, that know the community and are representative of the community.
Thank you. And Mel?
Yeah, I want to touch on, how we build trust with our communities. Because one thing we pride ourselves is that, Youth Action Fund is not the ones necessarily registering people to vote. We train our young people to register their own communities to vote, because you're more likely to trust the process when it's coming from someone you have that relationship with already. So it's super important that we're empowering the people who are directly affected by these harmful laws, by voter suppression, to combat it. We train them, and we pay them, and they go out into their communities to make sure that their peers, their classmates, their faculty, their staff are registered to vote in their schools. And in addition to that, right, our population, our target population here is young people. Young people are on their phones, so a big part of our campaign is to be on social media, be on Instagram, on TikTok. I think I just aged myself out of TikTok. I am not familiar with it. I don't know how to use it, so we're gonna leave that to the young ones, because I guess I passed that part. But we leverage those social media platforms to make sure that young people are informed about when the next election is, how to register to vote, and to make sure that they are civically engaged. And then a big component, right, of Youth Action Fund is our advising. So young people will apply to be advisees with us, and a lot of them are working on informing their communities. They live across a polling location, or their school is right next to a polling location, but they don't know how to vote or who to vote for or what is even on their ballot. So they're taking the initiative to create these social media campaigns, to create pamphlets to distribute to their students, so that their peers are aware that, hey, this election is coming up. Like, do you know if you're even registered? Do you know if this is your polling location? So I really I have a lot of pride in the fact that our young Floridians are the ones that are taking that initiative and making sure that their peers are informed and ready to vote.
And you're not alone. I don't know how to work TikTok or Twitter. I come from the Facebook era when you had to have a college EDU address. So everybody has a tool for them. But the important part is making sure that we're using it in like the trusted messengers are the ones that are getting that information out by any means necessary. And we know that voter engagement is about more than just getting people registered. I think, John, you mentioned before, like voting, engagement, education, 365 days of the year, not just during presidential elections, not just during GLTV. It's something that has to be integrated into like everyday conversation because all of the policies affect our everyday lives. So what creative strategies have you found most effective in getting people excited about voting and ensuring that they actually turn out?
So I love this question, right? We use an experiential learning cycle for all of our engagement. So what we tell people is no matter where you jump on the ride, you get to go all the way around and you'll get to experience a little bit of everything. So like I said before, we got 5 pillars: education, civic engagement, criminal restorative justice, economic empowerment, black mental health and wellness. But we have 40 programs inside each of those pillars collectively. Those 40 programs, whether it's our men's circle, it's our speed therapy session, it's our fitness days, it's our season saints events with the elders, it's our secure the bag book bag giveaway twice a year when kids are going back to school, free haircuts, free styles. We do so much work in the community, and we spend so much time addressing direct issues that folks face, partnering with different county representatives, city and municipal representatives to do record restrictions. We used to call them expungement fairs, so that you could have access to your rights, so you can vote again, so you can be eligible for wraparound services. Making sure that we are looking at legislation around moratoriums on utility bills and on rent hikes. You know, as we're having conversations, underemployment, housing becoming so drastically expensive, corporate landlords hiking rates. These are the things that are challenging folks in our community. Food deserts, we have community gardens that we're focusing on. We do houseless and homeless engagement a couple of times a year directly into the streets. You know, most folks don't know Atlanta gets really cold a couple of nights, you know, every year. On those nights, Black men don't have many shelters that they can call on. There aren't very many. There's only 1 or 2 places in the entire city of Atlanta where, if you are identified as male, you can go and stay overnight. So we do emergency survival kits for folks so that they have toiletries, materials, and any of those things that we do. The conversation is rooted in these are not problems that you should have to solve on your own. You live in a city. People are elected. People are appointed. People pay taxes. There are resources allocated, not just for roads, not just for buildings, not just for schools, but for you as a human being. And if you're not part of the conversation on how those resources are dispensed, then we're missing a very big part of the constituency. So for us, every conversation circles back to how are you using your voice and your vote to build your power so that you can affect material condition shifts in your community? Because real change is not coming magically out of the sky. We have to do it for ourselves. So that's asking folks, like I said, voting just gets you into the park. Will you volunteer how many hours a week? Will you come out and support one of our programs? Will you consider running yourself? Will you consider helping to write some legislation? Will you consider showing up to an elected's office and telling them about what's important to you in your community? Will you consider going to the school board meetings so that the parents of our children are heard? Because they make assumptions about our kids every day. They make assumptions about our households every day. But we know how hard it is when you're working 2 and 3 jobs and the school board meeting is at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday, 40 miles away from where your house is. So we're continuing to fight to find ways to make it easier for us to have access.
You're preaching, John. Woo! Okay, Mel.
Yeah, so we like to make it fun, right? We need to find creative and fun ways to get people excited about voting. We rented a bounce house near the University of Florida to get people registered to vote, because who doesn't just want to like chillax and bounce around and have a good time? So we really try to get creative with the ways we're engaging with young people. And we also want to meet people where they're at. So not all, but a lot of the major universities in Florida, their early voting location is actually on campus. This is extremely beneficial, right, to the students that live on campus, that live near campus, that don't have a car, that don't have reliable transportation. The public transportation in Florida sucks. So this helps a lot. So we do have even advisees that are getting creative with, creating an art installation that will gravitate students to come view and reflect on, and afterwards, taking a golf cart to the polling location that's on campus, because we want to make voting easy and we need to make it fun. So these are some of the ways that Youth Action Fund is engaging voters past the registration phase, right? Because registration is just step number one. And like John has mentioned several times, right? Like that's just your ticket, but you need to be civically engaged after the election. Are you holding these elected officials accountable? Are they keeping their promises? Are they protecting you the way they said they were going to protect you? And if not, well, when next election comes around, we know who we're voting for.
Absolutely. And Rio.
Yeah, so we really focus on, our organizations really like to focus on the idea of how do we integrate voter registration into the services that we already provide. So none of the organizations that we are funding and work with, none of them were created to just be a civic engagement machine. They were created to be a social service provider. They were created to meet a need that was not being met in their community. And so because of that, how do we build in civic engagement into what they're already doing, into their elder programs, into their food banks, into their job training stuff? How do we build civic engagement into that and make it be able to be something that can be added in easily and attached to it? So we are having community events. We are out at powwows, we're out at farmers markets, we're setting up tables with voter registration information. When we are having community meetings, we are providing literature about, here's how you register to vote, here's what's on your ballot, here's your election day, here's your here's your polling location, all that sort of stuff like that. So we want to make sure people are aware of that as well. We also, our organizations have a lot of creativity and freedom to do whatever they think is best. So one organization has really started to do a weekly bingo night that has been really popular amongst their community. People come, get some free food, play some bingo, and then they integrate civic engagement into that as well too, where they start educating people on, this is what's on the ballot here in North Dakota, this is what's on the ballot here in our city, here's how do we make this fun, how do we make this engaging for everyone that wants to learn about it. And then we also want to make sure our organizations and the people that we're talking to are aware that we are thinking about this work beyond just election day. What comes after this? How do we make sure that people no longer feel that once election is done, once I've cast my ballot, my work here is done, we can move on? We're really thinking a lot about what does it mean to hold elected officials accountable in off years, in years where there aren't going to be elections? How do we make sure we keep that pressure on so that we can see that those resources are coming back to our communities? So that's been a really, really big focus for us as well. And being able to sort of tie that in has really, I think, energized a lot of people and been able to make them see how their vote can really make an impact.
Yes, Rio. So what I'm hearing is like, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. So even though we're focused on what's happening right now, because we're 35 days out into the election, we still have to think about what are we doing after election day, because the work doesn't stop. And then that brings me to my next question. For someone who is new to voting, first time ever registering to vote, new voter, maybe an unsure voter, or someone that's been inactive for a while, what would you say to inspire them to vote this year?
I actually want to hop in on this one because I like to let them know that their concerns are valid. I think we need to stop pretending like, if you vote, everything will be okay, because it takes a lot, right? It takes a village. So when we come across people who are unsure if they want to register or unsure if they want to vote, there's validity to their concerns. So, I hear you. There's a lot of disinformation, right? Like we see it in the news, but also building on that, right? Like there is power to your vote. There are elections that have been so close to swaying one way or another because of a handful of votes. For example, here in Orange County in Florida, there was a commissioner race that is going to run off over 2 votes. people don't realize the power that county commissioners have. They impact our local taxes, they impact housing, which is on the top of everyone's minds, and they impact access to public transportation. And this election is teetering off of 2 votes. There's a plethora of other examples, but also building on the fact that Florida, for example, has several ballot amendments that we're going to see this year. So even if they feel some type of way about candidates, there are amendments that they have the opportunity to vote on. Amendments are like passing a law, right? Like, voters have the opportunity to implement laws that are going to protect us and keep us safe. So really, continuing that education and letting them know that, voting is not easy and they make voting challenging, but it's still important to do. And we need to do our part, right, as change makers in our community to, provide that information, to encourage them, right, that, this is going to make or break our next 4, 10 plus years. So we're going to keep it pushing, and Florida's going to keep seeing, challenges and hurdles, but it's life or death, and we're not going to stop.
Yes. What about you, John?
So first of all, I love that answer. That was dope. For us, we tell people all the time, we like the cynics, we like the skeptics. Most of the folks we deal with on a day-to-day basis, we don't trust the system anyway. So for us, it's really clear. We're not choosing our champion. We're choosing our opposition. We're choosing the landscape upon which we want to fight. We're making decisions about how we hold people accountable. So the question is, what are we doing every day to activate the power of our vote, to build accountability, to grow a cadre of folks who are going to stand up every day and be there to make sure that what you said you were going to stand for, when you fought for my vote, you stand for if you get my vote. So it's clear that if this is your first time voting, it can't be your last time voting. We also tell folks that we need 5. I need 5 from you. I need this election cycle. I need the off cycle. I need a midterm. I need another off cycle. And I need another presidential. This is not making a wish and throwing the magic bean into the well. There is arduous, difficult work that comes behind your vote. You are toiling in the field. You are tilling the soil. If you want something to change, you have to be invested in making it grow. And that's one of the biggest challenges that we face in this country, in my opinion, in our opinion, because we've told people that they can just phone it in. They can just show up and vote, and then the folks that get elected will take care of everything. But what we see in our communities every day is that that's just not true. We can't just leave it to the folks that get in office to handle the business. We got to stay on their tail every step of the way. So that's what we tell people. I need at least 5 votes out of you. That's a real commitment. I need you to keep showing up and volunteer. And we're going to work together to make sure that what we need to see changed in our community, we see changed. We're not trusting anybody to do it for us. We're going to do it together.
I love that. I love that. Rio.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I couldn't agree more with John and Mel, but I think one of the things we talk a lot about in our coalition, among the work that we are doing, is to kind of ask the question about why is there so much effort to keep your vote down? Why is there so much work being put in to make sure that our communities are kept out of the circle, to being kept out of the table? Like, why is that happening? It's because people are afraid of what is possible when a large plurality of voters come out, when a young, diverse coalition can come together, great things can happen. And so I think it's just very important for everyone to be clear-eyed about what opportunity is ahead of us if we can go ahead and try and grab it.
Absolutely. And also a note, like BIPOC voters and young voters were critical to key electoral outcomes in 2020, and explains how their participation directly influenced things like minimum wage increases, affordable health care, and racial justice reform. So like we have wins. We go celebrate our wins, even if they got a lowercase w, but it doesn't mean like the work doesn't stop. So just want to acknowledge that to anyone that's listening that is a new voter, an unsure voter, or an inactive voter. There's work to be done, and we're going to do it together. And now for my last question. And you can answer this personally or professionally, because I think both are important. But advocacy work itself is exhausting, especially when faced with voter apathy and burnout. How do you stay motivated, and how do you keep others motivated in the fight for democracy?
Okay, can I start with a shout out to Mel and Rio and just say, y'all are part of what keeps me motivated. Young, powerful, focused folks in this movement. In my office, like, I'm the old guy at 46. It's true. Everybody else in my office is 35 or younger. The majority of my team is under 30. They're 25, 26, 27. It's being around that energy, it's being around that optimism, it's being around that clarity that really keeps me motivated. So big shout out to your generation. Y'all are not playing around. Y'all are bringing real fire, real energy to this table, to this work. And then I'll say the little wins matter more than like the biggest things in the world. Like having that conversation with somebody, like I still canvas, I still get on doors, I still talk to people every cycle. Like I'm in the field, like having that phone call keeps me motivated. Being able to knock on those doors keeps me motivated. Talking to somebody that's registered to vote for the first time and they're telling me what they're excited about, and then talking to somebody that's 87 years old and they remember their first time voting and they see how much the world has changed. That's the stuff that motivates me. And I think once we plug people into it, like it's the community, that's the thing that keeps us motivated. Like we keep each other motivated together because we care. And because like something Mel said just rings true, we have a lot of fun. If you come into office and we take work serious, right? Like this is really serious. Like it's life and death. But if you can't laugh, if you can't smile, if there are no jokes, if the food ain't good, if the music ain't playing, if the center of like culture, family, and community is not that, leave that place. Go to another place. Cause I'm telling you, I can tell just from the conversation. If you go to Rio's office, if you go to Mel's office, you're gonna have a good time. You're gonna learn something, you're gonna eat good, you're gonna feel good when you walk out of there. That's how you stay motivated.
Beautiful. Rio or Mel?
Yeah, I'd love to jump in. The first thing I want to say is that this work that we do is hard, and it's really worthwhile to remember that and to not feel ashamed or like you need to work yourself down to the bone. I think one of the best pieces of advice I got when I first kind of got into this work, when I first started doing organizing, is that it's okay to take a break. It is not the end of the world. You do not need to feel bad if you take 20 minutes off, if you take a day off, if you have a weekend or something like that. Don't feel bad. Go live your life. Get your batteries recharged. That's really, really important to this sort of stuff like that. So I would say the first off, whatever you want to do, whatever recharging your batteries looks like to you is up to you, and you should figure out what that is. But to understand that this work is hard and that it's really important to take a moment. Not everyone does this sort of stuff. Not everyone is knocking on doors. Not everyone is talking to everyone in their life about why voting is important, why this stuff matters. Most people don't know who their legislative elected officials are, who their state representative is. We are unique because of the passion we have for this stuff. So do not ever feel like you should be grinding yourself down to dust because of how much you care about it. That's the really hard part too, is that we care about this stuff. We're passionate about this sort of stuff, but to make sure that it's okay to take a second to step away, catch your breath, and then get back in there.
And I stay motivated because I have to. The stakes are high. There is a lot on the line. Young people are facing that head on. We are, seeing the culmination of decades of policies right now, and young people are facing the brunt of that. So personally, I stay motivated because I recognize that I don't have a choice. other than, doing my part and encouraging others to get involved, to, talk to their neighbors about, are you voting this election? But I also want to touch on what Rio and John have been, saying, which is that we need our community, and we need to fight for this power with the masses, right? We can't do this alone. We have to count on each other. We have to be there for each other, because there's power in numbers. And I love and I appreciate the change makers both here in Central Florida, across the state, and across the nation. This is my first time meeting Rio and John, but I know they're doing the good work. I know that they care about the future of our generation and the generations to come. So I really encourage anyone watching that if you haven't gotten involved, if you haven't signed up to volunteer, that this is your call to action. This right here is your opportunity to start that fight, because it's never too late.
Yes, thank you so much. This was such an inspiring conversation. And I just want to highlight, like, we can't pour from empty cups. It is a disservice to not only ourselves and our families and our communities, but like, we can do this together. And this is why I show up to do this work, because I am able to touch folks like you all and be inspired. So thank you all for your insights and your incredible dedication to this work that you're doing in your backyards and across the country. So tonight's discussion has shown us that while we face significant challenges, especially with the rise of voter suppression laws, we are also making history. Our communities, particularly Black and Brown communities, have shown their strength and determination in not only recent elections, but throughout history. So I'd like to personally thank Rio from National Urban Indian Family Coalition, John from Black Male Initiative, and Mel from Youth Action Fund. Also, shout out to Amanda Hollowell from Civic Nation, who was our other panelist who unfortunately couldn't join us. Thank you to our ASL interpreters, as well as our Family Values at Work digital team for making this live stream happen. But last but not certainly least, I'd like to thank those that joined the live stream today. You have a superpower. We just got to find what that is and go out and do the good work in your own backyards, in your own homes, in your own communities, in the way that makes sense to you. As we continue to fight against voter suppression and disinformation, it's more important than ever that we remain united and engaged. Each of you here tonight plays a key role in that work. And together, we can ensure that every eligible voter's voice is heard in the coming election and future elections to come. So to everyone watching, remember, your vote matters. The stakes are high this year, and ensuring that every eligible voter is engaged and informed is more critical than ever. So let's continue to inspire and educate and mobilize our communities so that we can build a more inclusive and representative democracy. We got 35 days, y'all, until the election. Let's make each day count. So get ready, set, and vote. And if you or a loved one happen to miss the live stream, you can catch us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. Follow our partners on their social media as well, and reach out if you have questions. There's always someone here to help. So thank you so much for joining us, and I hope that you all have a safe and wonderful evening.